Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Full Court Trap Podcast. Another pod coming at you here live on this Friday evening here with my main man, Blake Smith. We're getting ready for another loaded weekend of hoops. We got ranked matchups. We've got Duke playing a non-conference game in the middle of February. That's an interesting one. We got lots of bubble teams in action looking to make statements and get their resume boosted. Starting to hit that time of the year where it's do or die for some of these teams, Blake. A lot of teams are going to be desperate this weekend, and that's when we can get some of the most fun results. So I'm excited to talk about it. But we'll start with the ranked teams in action, the ranked on ranked matchups, excuse me. The one of the weekend that I'm looking forward to the most in the SEC, where a lot of our matchups of the year have came so far. Tennessee at Texas A&M on Saturday. Noon tip-off for this game for the number 6 Tennessee Volunteers versus number 7 Texas A&M Aggies over there in College Station. Blake, this is a game of two teams that really kind of have a similar style of basketball. They're both very tough and physical on defense. They've got some offensive playmakers as well. Zakai Ziegler and Wade Taylor, that's going to be a great guard matchup that I'm looking forward to. Chaz Lanier, Zurich Phelps going at it as well. This is going to be a fun one over there in the SEC.
Yeah, you hit it pretty dead on. Like these two teams really mirror each other in like play style. They're not very good offensively. I feel like they got a couple good pieces. Both teams respectfully, but them as a whole is not like a very high offensive power team. They rely more so on physicality and just their overall defensive mentalities. And I do think Tennessee ends up pulling this one off. I think Chaz Lanier is really going to be the factor behind this game that really sets them apart from A&M. I think they're on the road to A&M, correct?
Yes, it is at A&M.
I do think they end up pulling this one off after they just lost a game to Kentucky not too long ago on the road. I think they're going to fix some things, and I think they're going to end up winning this one, honestly.
I'm doing my little metrics breakdown here over on evanmaya.com, my favorite analytics website. And
Gotta
Blake,
love Evan.
Yeah, you got to love Evan. He does great work over there. But in terms of overall player rating, all those metrics that he combines, the offensive efficiency rating, defense, and whatnot, take a guess. So number 1 and 2, who do you think number 1 and 2 is? It's pretty obvious.
It's got to be Auburn and Duke, right?
It's two players, player ratings.
Cooper Flag, Broom.
But you're on, Cooper Flag and Broom. But you know who number 3 is?
I'm looking at it now. It's Zakai.
Zakai Ziegler.
Then you got Joseph Tugler, Anthony Robinson, top 5.
I'm going to be honest. I wasn't expecting to see Zakai Ziegler that high, but I mean, that's a testament to his just level of play that he can reach. He's one of the best defenders in the country. He's elite at playmaking. His offense, it's a little bit hit and miss at times. And I do think that in that battle of the guards there, Ziegler kind of has the edge over Wade Taylor just because Wade Taylor, he can be a little bit prone to shot chucking. I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast before, and I feel like if he plays into that in this game, that's going to fit right into what Zakai wants because he's going to be in his face all night long. Yeah. He's going to be able to get pressure on him and force him into tough looks. And then I think that's just really going to put the pressure on a guy like Zurich Phelps to get it done and be the main option. And I don't know about you, Blake, but I don't think that's super sustainable if you're Texas A&M and Buzz Williams.
No, and I think Milicic is going to have a good game too for Tennessee. I just think his ability to score, like as like a 6'11" guy at the power forward / center position, it depends. Like some games, I feel like he plays a center. Some games he's at the 4, but I mean that's just a tough guy to stop. Like if he's on like he was in that one Kentucky game where he had like 20-some, I think it was a game at Tennessee. If he's on like that game against a really physical team, then I think this Tennessee team is just going to be too much to stop.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel on this one. I think that Tennessee, they're kind of a hard team to get a grip on because when Chaz is doing his thing and when Milicic can complement that, you've got Ziegler distributing and being that top 3 most valuable player that Evan Maya has him as. They're a very cohesive unit, but at the same time, when they struggle to score like they have at points, it can get ugly. But I just think that in a game like this, you're really going to be relying on Ziegler, like I said, to kind of shut down what Wade Taylor wants to do. And I think he's going to be able to achieve that. And I think that's just going to give Tennessee the upper hand in this matchup because Chaz, I think he's going to be able to get it going in this one. And then when it comes to the big men for Tennessee as well, I kind of like them over Texas A&M's front court. I don't
Yeah,
know
me
about you.
too. Yeah.
I would take Okpara and Milicic over the guys that A&M has, like the Henry Colemans and Pharrell Payne. Pharrell Payne's very talented. He's a great player for them. Don't get me wrong, but I think Tennessee, when it comes to it, they're just going to be a little bit more, I think, capable to make the plays to win this game offensively. I think they've just got more guys that can step up in spots and do it. Whereas, I mean, if Wade Taylor's ineffective, it gets a little bit rocky there for A&M. But if this turns into a defensive slugfest, then I
I
think
think it
A&M
will
has,
too, though. I
yeah.
think it really has the looks of happening.
If Tennessee can get their looks and get Chaz and Milicic going alongside Ziegler, I think they get it done. But at the same time, if this game gets mucked up and it's really low scoring, I think that favors A&M because they have the home court advantage in this one. It really is kind of a toss up. I think I'm going with Tennessee in this one just because, like all the factors I've said. But it's going to be a close one. Really a key battle as well here in the SEC as we're riding down the stretch here. Top four for a double bye in SEC. That's going to be extremely valuable in the conference tournament in Nashville. And A&M and Tennessee are both within striking distance of that, and they got to get this one under their belt so they can progress towards that. But transitioning over to the Big 12, we've got another matchup of very similar styles, Blake. Iowa State and Houston. These are two teams that really have a physical defensive DNA to them, like I mentioned with the previous two teams over in the SEC. Houston, though, they've been on a roll lately. There's not too many teams in the country that are playing better basketball than Houston right now, whereas Iowa State, they've had some slip-ups as they've gone throughout conference play, although they have been dealing with some injuries as well. They did suffer the injury to Milan Momcilovic in the regular season for a couple of games. So Iowa State, they have all the makings of a team that can compete at the highest level and make a deep run in March. But strictly in this game, Blake, against Houston, who do we think's coming out on top? Houston, they're in firm control of first in the Big 12 right now at 14-1. Iowa State's sitting over there at 11-4. 8 versus 5. I mean, this is a heavyweight battle at its finest, just like the game we talked about previously.
Yeah, I do think Houston ends up pulling this one off. I don't think they're going to let their foot off the gas in this one. Iowa State, like you said, they've kind of been trending down as of recent, and Houston just continues to raise their stock as a national championship contender. So this is a really, really scary team right now, both like on both ends of the floor. They kill you more so on the defensive end, but their offense isn't anything to overlook. Like Milo Susan has like 5 assists per game, and he's been really consistent for them recently. Joseph Tugler, I think his name is, has been really good for them. Terrence Arsenault, he's not really a guy that is going to put up crazy point numbers, but he does like really everything well. Like he's really good defensively, and he's a really good role player. Emmanuel Sharp, like this team's just super deep. LJ Cryer as well. Like I'm telling you, this team is just super deep. Iowa State, I mean, got to give them credit. They're still a really good team, but I just think with their recent struggles, I think they're gonna not come out as hot in this one. I think Houston ends up portraying in this one.
Yeah, speaking more of the advanced analytics side of things here, Evan Maya, 4 of the top 30 players he has there on his player ratings come from Houston. You've got
Yeah, I saw
Tugler,
that.
yeah, you've got Tugler at 4th, you've got Arsenault at 15th, LJ Cryers down there at 29, and then you got Uzan over at 23. So that team is deep. They've got players across the board. And that doesn't even factor in another guy I really like, Jawan Roberts. He's a force in the paint. He's been averaging 14 and 6 over his last 10 games. He really found himself starting in that Kansas game when he went toe for toe with Hunter Dickinson and really just won that matchup. But you can't underestimate this Iowa State team because Sean Gilbert, Curtis Jones, those are 2 of the most electric guards in that conference. They can score at will when they get going. They're 6-4 over their last 10 games, the Cyclones, while Houston's sitting at 9-1. Like I mentioned, they've been humming recently. This one's a really hard game for me to pick. I think I'm going to go with Houston though, simply because of the fact that they've been so good at home this year. They're
Yeah.
13-1 in their home games, and they just are riding the hot hand right now. And until somebody's able to stop them, it's just kind of hard to bet against them. But if
Hmm.
you're Iowa State looking to get a win in a tough environment here, Blake, what do they got to do to get this thing back on track? Because we know that when they're at their best, Iowa State is easily a Final Four contender, if not a national title contender.
I really think they got to force a lot of turnovers in this one. Houston, they're I think top 5 in the country for turnovers per game. Like they don't let up many turnovers a game. And Iowa State all years have been a really good defensive team, getting a bunch of steals. So I think that's going to be a big key in this one. And I also think against a defense as good as Houston, they're going to have to get some open looks and knock those shots down, because this is going to be a game where like you can't really have a huge margin for error, because Houston's just going to from tip off try to kill you.
That's what I think might happen in this one too, with the home crowd behind Houston. I just feel like they're going to be able to get the intensity to play the way they want to play and really muck up Iowa State. And the thing that really is impressive about this Houston team is we've always known them for their defense, but now they've got the shot makers too. And I mean, that's a dangerous combination for a guy like Kelvin Sampson, who's one of the best coaches in the business. I mean,
Yeah.
if he can find an offensive identity, then this team can hit a whole nother level, and it wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
surprise me if they get a comfortable win tomorrow. I think it'll be a close one. I don't want to predict
Mm-hmm.
any blowout wins here, but I think Houston gets it done on the home court. Going to be too much, I think. And then moving back over to the SEC, Kentucky, they get their rematch against Alabama at Coleman Coliseum. The Crimson Tide, they're on a 2-game losing streak here, Blake. That's been a rarity for Nate Oates' crew this year. They've been one of the best teams in the country all season long. Still firmly believe they are one of the best teams in the country all season long. But what are they going to have to do here to avoid a 3-game losing skid? Because, I mean, Mark Sears, he played his heart out in that Missouri game, and it was all for nothing. The rest of the team just didn't show up. Missouri got whatever they want. Kentucky, they've got some injury questions. It's really not sure as of right now if Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson will be available. So this has the making of a possible get right spot for Alabama if Kentucky isn't healthy. But if Kentucky is healthy, I mean, that's a team that took Alabama right down to the wire in the first matchup.
Yeah, I really do think the biggest key in this game for Bama has to be that they have to hone in on defense, like from tip, because Mizzou had them down. I think it was like 12 or 15-0
Yeah,
within
they
like the
jumped
first
on them
three
early.
minutes, and like from there on, Bama tried to claw their way back. But when you're talking on the road in a really tough environment that hadn't seen that kind of like level of basketball in quite some time, since like the Michael Porter era. And even then, that team wasn't really good. It was just really the Michael Porter show. Uh, but anyways, like Missouri was knocking down every shot they wanted. They got every look they could get. Uh, they're dicing up Alabama. Like their defense looked non-existent. It almost reminded me of how bad Kansas looked, like in that game against Utah, where they just showed no effort. That's kind of what Alabama looked like. I just don't think it's a effort thing. I just think Alabama's that good offensively that they don't really hone in as much on the defensive end. But I think the same thing can be said about Kentucky, because like they've they've been really bad defensively all year. That's been the biggest storyline. I feel like that and injuries. But their offense has been a really consistent piece. That's why they beat Duke. That's why they beat Florida. That's why they were so close against Bama last game. That's why they swept Tennessee this year. So, like, this is really going to be yet another game. I think that it's going to be an offensive juggernaut type of game. I don't think it gets up in the high 90s, up to the hundreds in this one, kind of like the last Kentucky Alabama matchup went and how the Mizzou Alabama matchup just went. I think it's going to be upper 80s, maybe mid 80s. I do think if Kentucky gets Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler back, which I don't know if they will, it should. I guess reports are saying like Lamont was like doing some live action practice stuff today. Jackson was doing skill stuff today. Shout out Jacob Polachek for that update. But yeah, if those two guys go, I think Kentucky wins. Um, but if not, I think Alabama's got it. It really just depends. If they have those two guys tomorrow, Kentucky that is, then they're winning. If Alabama or if Kentucky doesn't have those guys, Bama's winning.
I saw a little bit of a concerning stat today on Twitter for Kentucky. This was courtesy of Wildcats Tongue on Twitter. So Alabama, they're second in the country in offensive 2-point percentage. Anything inside the arc, they are automatic, it seems, this year. Kentucky is 243rd in defensive 2-point percentage. So not good there. Alabama, if you're Kentucky, I guess the plan is, it sounds weird, but you really would rather want to have Bama just pulling up with threes because Kentucky, they really struggle to guard the paint and to get and to stop mid-range action. So I think really if Kentucky wants to pull out a win here, they got to play in to Bama's kind of 3-point fast-paced style. But it just seems like this is too much of a get-right spot for Bama. I don't see them losing 3 in a row, even if Butler and Robinson play, to be honest with you.
This kind of favors like that Kentucky-Bama game they just played at Rupp not too long ago. Bama came in that game losing after, I think, who was it against? Auburn that they lost against before that? It was somebody. It wasn't Auburn. That was too recent.
It was Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then Bama came in there pissed off, and they won that. So this is another game that Bama's coming in pissed off. Nate Oates looked insanely ticked off last game against Mizzou. So, yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Defense will definitely be optional in this game, I think.
Yeah.
I could see this getting into the 90s, but another important thing here, too, Andrew Carr in the first matchup, he was kind of limited. He started to work his way back to full health.
He's looking a lot more like early season Carr now.
He's looking like the early season Andrew Carr, so I think that's going to be important because he's going to be tasked with trying to contain Grant Nelson. And then Amari Williams, he's emerged as one of the better big men in the conference so far. In conference play, he's looked outstanding. He's been really getting a lot more physical in the paint, kind of using his strength and his body to his advantage. And I kind of feel like he was shying away from that early in conference play. Yeah. So I think Kentucky's front court has improved a lot since the first matchup, and that could be beneficial because they could end up ultimately having the better duo there. Grant Nelson, I think that he's better than both Carr and Williams, but Jaron Stevenson and Cliff Omarui, I don't know if they're as good as Amari Williams.
Jaron Stevenson sucks. I'll put it point blank. Not trying to hate on the guy, but like he's not really an Alabama big like that should be good. Cliff Omarui's been really underwhelming. This is a guy that was getting like $2 million thrown at him, I believe, in the portal, and he ended up going to Alabama. But he just hasn't been insanely good. He played well against Kentucky last matchup, but I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I think these are two very different teams compared to when they first matched up, but I really think that either way it goes, Alabama gets it done here just because I don't see them losing 3 in a row. I think they're too good of a team to go on that kind of skid this year, but I could be wrong. I just don't, especially with the uncertainty of health in question. I mean, Travis Perry trying to contain Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway doesn't sound too good. A little bit concerning there. So if Lamont plays, that's definitely helpful for Kentucky. I just don't think they're going to have enough in this one, but it's going to be a good game, I think. This Kentucky team, they've really only dropped one stinker where they've got absolutely boat race, and that was against Ole Miss. So I don't see that happening again. And with the emergence of Trent Noah finding a role and Travis Perry at least being serviceable, I think they could withstand the possible storm that could lead to a rout. But we'll see here. I think Alabama gets it done. But moving on to a game that I hinted at earlier in the intro, Duke versus Illinois in a rare non-conference game in February, Blake. This one, it's a neutral site matchup. I believe it's at MSG, right?
Yeah, it is.
I think so, yeah. So Duke is taking on an Illinois team that has not been the same for quite a while now. I mean, Brad Underwood, he said that his team has been sick to a level that he's never seen in his coaching tenure, and that's had a lot to do with their struggles. Tomislav Ivicic, he's barely been practicing, Underwood said. A lot of problems are going on with this Illinois squad right now. They're completely out of their control, so it's hard to kind of blame them for the skid they've been on because apparently they're just getting absolutely destroyed by some kind of illness. But in this matchup, Blake, I mean, with all that considered, I think it's going to be hard to pick against Duke here.
Yeah, and I mean to top it all off with all the stuff out of control or out of their control going against them right now, you got Marez Johnson, who is putting up big numbers against Michigan State. Yeah, I think he had 14 boards. I don't know how many points. It was 6 or 8 against Michigan State recently. It was last Saturday, actually. And then he ended up breaking his wrist later in that game. So you take him out of the equation. You got Tomislav Ivicic probably not playing, or he's kind of limited, not the same. Then you add in Jacku. You're relying on him basically to take the keys of that offense as a freshman who's not got a ton of experience. I mean, he's played in 4 or 5 months with Illinois. He does have experience, but he doesn't have the experience of being the sole guy to go get a basket when he doesn't have much help. So it's just going to feel like a tough game for Illinois. Like you said, they've been battling with a ton of sickness, and they just been losing lately, not really competing. The Michigan State game, they got boat raced. Wisconsin, they got absolutely demolished. Rutgers, they lost to recently, and Rutgers is a bottom 3 to 5 team in the Big Ten right now. And they also lost to USC by 10 not too long ago. They got killed by Maryland when Maryland wasn't ranked. So yeah, this Illinois team is definitely shaky. I'm putting the entire house on Duke to win this one by over 10. I just don't think it's going to be a really close game.
The good thing about Illinois is they did build up a decent enough resume earlier on to be able to withstand something like this. They're sitting at 17-10, but they're still comfortably in the tournament. I mean, it's really hard to go against Duke in this one. I think if you're Illinois, you just got to go give your best shot with what you got. And really, they just got to get healthy by any means necessary right now. If they got to quarantine like we're back in the 2020-2021 season and just shut things down, I mean, do what you got to do, because if that team can get healthy, I think that they might end up catching somebody in the tournament because they're going to be, as a result of all this, a little bit lower than maybe they anticipated initially. So they could definitely end up catching somebody on a scare when it comes time for March. So I'm not giving up on this squad in the long term, but right now it's just really hard to get behind them. There's so much uncertainty and a lot of problems going on in that program. So they just got to worry about getting healthy, to be honest with you, and getting Duke at this point when Duke's humming just about as well as any squad in the nation, minus that slip up against Clemson a few games back. I don't see Duke falling in this one, to put it bluntly. But on Sunday, we got some Big East battles here, Blake. UConn at St. John's, another MSG game. St. John's hosting Dan Hurley's UConn Huskies, who are sitting unranked right now. Not really a sight we're used to seeing these last couple of years with Dan Hurley and the crew. 18-8 on the year, while St. John's, number 10 in the country, 23-4. We've sung St. John's praises all season long so far on this podcast, Blake, and we might have a solo video in the future coming up here. There's so much to like about this team, from Kadari Richmond, R.J. Lewis, Zuby Ejiofor. They've just got so much talent across the board, and it's a deep squad. They play physical, and they've got a really good offense behind it as well. True makeup of a Rick Pitino team, like I've said over and over again. Their last defeat came about 9 days ago when they played Villanova in that crazy game where they lost by 2. But other than that, they've really been rolling through the Big East. So do we think they keep it going here against UConn? They played them earlier in the month, and they beat them by 6 at UConn, and now they get to host them over in MSG.
Without a doubt, I think they're winning this one. UConn, they just lost a game they probably shouldn't have. Not even probably shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. it's been a really long story all year long with their defense. I feel like they don't really have an identity as a team right now. UConn, that is, and they're just not. They're struggling. Uh, when you're losing a Seton Hall team that's like what 6-18 or something,
Brutal.
like that just doesn't happen. Like it shouldn't happen at least. And yeah, I think St. John's is going to single handedly win this game by like 10 plus. Because I mean,
10 plus.
it was a 5 point game last time on the road at UConn. I mean, isn't their home court MSG St.
Yep.
John's? I thought so.
Yep.
I don't know why I questioned myself, but yeah, I think they're gonna have the city of New York rocking. The Big Apple gonna have Kadari Richmond go off there, and I also think R.J. Lewis will have yet another big game. And I just think they're going to be too much to overcome because that St. John's team, like you said, and they just got too much depth, like top to bottom.
Yeah, the path for a UConn victory here, I feel like it has to revolve around solo ball and Liam McNeely finding a groove early. Because, I mean, Blake, when we look at this UConn team, outside of McNeely and solo ball, I mean, where's your offense coming from?
Alex Caravan, but I mean, even then, he's not like really a 1 or 2 type of guy. He's kind of more so like a third, fourth option, I feel like, on a good team. But I mean, they've kind of had to make him like a 1 or 2 option this year. Caravan, that is, this season. And I mean, it just hasn't worked really. And their defense as well, UConn's, it's been bad all year. There's no hiding that. Yeah, I just think this St. John's team is going to own that part of the game.
In the last matchup against St. John's, you know how many Caravan had?
He didn't have many, right?
3.
I thought he got held at single digits.
Yeah,
It's unreal.
numbers wise, I mean, he's averaging 14 on the year, but like when you just watch this team, him being thrown into that first option kind of role, it hasn't been conducive to success whatsoever. I mean, on those teams the years past, him as a complimentary role, he's one hell of a role player, and I mean, he can score at a good level, and like he can put up numbers, but at the same time, when you're relying on him and like the next guy behind him, you've got as a freshman and Liam McNeely, and then solo ball who has his moments, but at the same time can get a little bit shaky at times as well. It's just tough. I mean, there's just no consistency on this UConn team. They'll go and look really good one game, and then the next they're dropping a game to Seton Hall where they lead by 7 with 30 seconds left. It's just been a really perplexing year for Dan Hurley, and I don't think that trying to get right against St. John's, which is one of the better teams in the country and the best in the Big East, I don't think it's going to work out there. I'll be very surprised if UConn pulls a stunner here, but Dan Hurley tends to work best when nobody's believing in him, so we'll see if he gets that magic going in him again. But moving off of these ranked squads that are going up against great opponents, we'll look over to the not-so-great opponents, which is the bubble. There's a lot of bubble teams in action this weekend, Blake, that have some opportunities against ranked squads. So we're going to go through. We're not going to preview every single one of them in depth, but we're going to sound the upset alert alarm. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being zero concern for an upset whatsoever, and 10 being Sharpie it in, I'm calling the upset right now. We're going to give our upset alert levels for each of these bubble teams in action. So we'll start in the SEC. Oklahoma. We're going by Lenardi's bubble metrics here, by the way, people. So Oklahoma, last 4 in per Joe Lenardi. They host Mississippi State, a quality Mississippi State team that absolutely just boat raced A&M a couple of days ago. So, Blake, the upset alert level here. Sound the alarm. What's it sitting at for you in this one? Do we think Oklahoma can catch the Bulldogs here?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I put it more so at like a 2. I really don't see it happening. There's probably like 5% chance of that even happening. Oklahoma's been really, 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 really bad. Like in the past, like 5-6 games. Yeah, 5 games. I mean, they got stomped by Auburn, but I mean, at this point, who hasn't? They got stomped by Tennessee. They got stomped by Missouri. They got beat by LSU, and they also got stomped by Florida. So this is a team that was ranked top 25 at one point. They've been on the tank watch ever since, and I just don't think they have enough to beat this Mississippi State team that's, to put it point blank, a really deep team right now.
Yeah, going out of non-conference play, I mean, Oklahoma was undefeated, and we were thinking that they could really start cooking as they got into SEC play, and it's just gone way downhill ever since then.
Yeah.
I'll put my upset level at like I'll go with 4 or a 5, like low to mid-level concern here. I think Mississippi State by far is the better team, but if you're Oklahoma and you want to catch them, I mean, Jalen Moore, he's going to have to do his thing. Jeremiah Fears, he's going to have to kick it into gear as well. And then you're going to have to keep Josh Hubbard in check. Josh, he's been playing pretty solid in these last couple of games. And Oklahoma, they're just trending in the wrong direction. I mean, 3-7 in their last 10, not really being efficient whatsoever. It's hard to see them pulling off an upset here, but if a couple of things swing their way, I could see it happening. The home court, obviously, that's a big factor into this, but the matchup predictor for ESPN, their metrics over there, they've got Oklahoma 48% chance to pull this one out, Mississippi State at 51. So they've got more faith, it seems, than we do. But I don't see this one being a win for Oklahoma. I think Mississippi State's too good, and I think they're going to pull it off here and survive this road trip. But moving over to the Big 12 bubble squads, West Virginia, they're going to Texas Tech. As of today, they are one of the last 4 byes per Joe Lenardi. Blake, what's the upset level looking like in this one?
I'll put it at a 5 just because I think this West Virginia team does have like some good talent. The big one being Javon Small. They've upset some teams this year already, and they have struggled semi-recently. So, I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way and say they're going to for sure upset them. But, yeah, I do think they could give Texas Tech some troubles. Texas Tech, they've shown they're vulnerable in that last game they had. So, I'll put it at 5 right now. I do think Texas Tech pulls this one off, but, I mean, there is a world where I could see this being an upset trap type of game.
If this were at West Virginia, I think I would be sounding the alarm because West Virginia plays pretty good at home. But this is a Texas Tech team that you're catching. They're already coming off a disappointing loss on Tuesday against TCU, so I think they're going to be ready to play. It would take a mountainous effort from Javon Small and a lot of things going wrong for Texas Tech on the home court to get this one done. So I'll put it at like a 3. I'm really not super concerned about this one for Texas Tech. If West Virginia gets a great performance from Javon Small and some guys on Texas Tech kind of have the hangover from the last game, then yeah, I could see this being a little bit tighter than maybe I'm thinking right now, but I don't see it as of today. But another intriguing one, Blake, Vandy, they just came off a loss against Kentucky where they really never stood a chance. I mean, at halftime it was close, but from then on, Kentucky took control. They're one of the last 4 byes per Lenardi right now, and they're hosting Ole Miss. Now, we know what Memorial Magic has done so far this season. It's gotten Tennessee. It's gotten Kentucky. Do we think it's going to get Ole Miss?
I wish I had a freaking siren sound effect on. I'd be going, wee-woo. I'm putting it at an 8 right now. I think Memorial Magic is a real thing. They beat Tennessee, which is a team that kind of mirrors Ole Miss, like with how good defensively they are. And I do think Vandy can pull this one off if Jason Edwards is locked in. He struggled on the road at Kentucky, but, I mean, that was a road game, and Vandy does most of their damage at home, I feel like, this season. They also beat Kentucky at home, so, yeah, I do think they continue that home type of trend going on, and I think there's a good chance they can win that.
I'm sounding the upset alarm completely. I'm going 10. This is my one Sharpie pick. I'm taking Vandy. The Memorial Magic, it's going to claim another victim. Now, the reason I say this is because Ole Miss has shown they're vulnerable to lower tier teams on the road. They won by 2 at LSU. They narrowly escaped South Carolina by 4. This is a team that when they get on the road, they kind of have a little bit of a tendency to play down to their competition. And I think if you do that against Vanderbilt, that's going to be a recipe for disaster because Mark Byington, he's got a serviceable squad there. There's guys on that team who can get it done. Jason Edwards, he's electric. I think he could end up being a big-time player in this game. But I'm going all in on the Doors here. I'm calling the upset completely. Just sound every single alarm on the keyboard, where whatever sound effects, soundboard, Vandy's getting it done. That's fine. Trap upset pick of the week. I may not Sharpie in another one on this list, but if I'm going to Sharpie one in, yeah, I'm all in on Vandy. Don't let me down, guys. So moving on in the SEC, another bubble team. First 4 out, per Lenardi, the Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to Auburn. Blake, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this might be the only upset alert
0.
level
We're
that we
putting that
have
at
as a 0.
0. Yeah. I mean, Georgia's falling off. Like, this team is not good at all. Get them out of the tournament.
This is the lone 0 of the entire slate that we have listed here for the bubble teams. Hypothetically, what's the recipe that Georgia gets an upset in the jungle?
This is gonna sound kind of effed up, but Janai Broom would have to get hurt. Denver Jones would have to somehow get sick. Tahad Pettiford would have to be out for the game because he's getting load management. The list keeps going and going. I don't think Georgia has any chance at all. I feel like me saying this right now is going to spark a fire under Georgia, and we're going to be putting some edit on TikTok. But I just think they have 0 chance at all.
I feel like the chance to get them was when Georgia hosted them, and they let that one slip away.
Let that one go.
Yeah, they really could have possibly had that one there. Yeah. So I don't see this happening in the jungle. It would take a lot to go wrong for Auburn, in my opinion. They're just too good, and Bruce Pearl, I don't think that he lets those guys overlook anybody. And, I mean, they had a really bad performance against Arkansas a couple of days ago, to be honest with you. That was not the Auburn basketball we've grown accustomed to seeing, and I feel like that might be the one lone stinker they have the rest of the way. And I think this is a get-right spot for them. They're going to fire on all cylinders like they have been, go back to the form they had against Alabama, and I think they're going to get it done pretty easily. Over in the ACC, SMU, they're one of the first 4 out. I believe as of today, they still don't have a quad 1 victory. They're going to have a chance, though. They host Clemson, the number 18th ranked Clemson Tigers. They host them. I'm going to be honest here, Blake. I think this one isn't a 10, but I think it's up there. I think I could put this one at a 7 or an 8 on terms of the upset concern level.
Yeah, I do think. I don't know. I kind of want to put it at a 5 just because how bad SMU's been against quad 1 type of teams. I think the only – who is the best ones they have? Georgia Tech, LSU. Those are bottom feeder type of teams in their respective conferences. Washington State, I guess that's an okay win. Notre Dame's a bottom feeder in the ACC. Virginia Tech's another bottom feeder. Pitt might be one of their better wins. They got boat raced to North Carolina on the road. Got killed, absolutely blitzed by Louisville at home. Got blitzed by Duke at home. Yeah, I'll put it at a 4, maybe a 5. Clemson, I don't know if they'll be the same team on the road against a team that has a really good record. Yeah, I don't know. This game might be able to go either way, but I think I got Clemson in this one just because of how bad SMU's been against quad 1.
I'll lock this one in as a firm 7. I think there's a above average concern level. I just think that SMU, I mean, there's obviously going to be an emphasis on the importance of this game. This is a game they have to get for their tournament hopes. If you're going to put together a resume, there's not a lot of chances to do that in the ACC, and you're being gifted an opportunity here on your home court against a Clemson team that is solid. I don't think they're special by any means, but they're a good basketball team. I just think this is a chance for them to go out and prove themselves, and move themselves up on that bubble line, and they're going to have to get it done here. So you can't ever underestimate a team that's playing desperate. I've said it once, I'll say it again. And speaking of a team that's going to be playing desperate, Arkansas at Bud Walton. They're one of the last four in per Lenardi right now, and they're hosting a Missouri squad that just blew the doors off Alabama for a majority of that game on Wednesday night. Blake, I don't know what my concern level is for this one. Arkansas is a very confusing basketball team at times. They have shown they can go and beat a team the likes of Kentucky, and then they've also shown that they can lose to a team like LSU. So it's really hard to kind of get a firm grasp on this team, and they're also coming off a really disappointing loss against Auburn, where they were leading at one point. I mean, they had their chances to win that game. I just feel like there may be a little bit of a hangover effect here. I'll give you the floor first for the upset alert meter, but I'm not sure if it's going to be super high for me.
I'll be the guy to do it then. I'm putting at like an 8 or 9. Mizzou, they're coming off a super high against Alabama, where they played about as flawless as you can play in the game of college basketball. I feel like they're going to have some room for some slip-ups. And I think Arkansas, coming off that loss against Auburn, where they also tried to play about as flawless as they could, it didn't work out that way. They only put up 60 points in that game. But I do think they come out firing against a really good Mizzou team. They've had their chances against really good teams this season. They played close against Tennessee, I believe. They played semi-close against Alabama. They beat Kentucky. They beat Georgia, who's like a bubble type of team. They played really close against A&M recently. I guess there's a really, I don't know if it's a bad Arkansas team. I do think it has its obvious holes, but I mean, they're starting to click, I feel like now. They're starting off way too slow though at the beginning of conference play, and that's kind of why they're sitting here at 15 and 11, 16 and 11, I think.
15 and 11, yeah.
They kind of put themselves in a deep hole, but I do think this win might get them into bubble talks. I actually do think they pull this one off.
Are you going to Sharpie it in at a number 10 then on the scale?
I might as well, actually. Sharpie in as a 10.
I'll put it down for a 6. The concern's there. It's not super high, but I could see the pathway to a victory just because, like you said, Arkansas's played some good teams close that they've gotten Kentucky. And it's not that the team's not talented. They just haven't put it all together at points this year. They've really just looked incohesive at times, but then at other times they look like they're a very quality team. There's talent, and it's hard to bet against Cal when he's playing desperate as well. So we'll see what happens in that one. It's an intriguing spot. That's a rivalry, too. I mean, Arkansas fans, they hate Missouri, so you can't underestimate that factor either. I think this could be one of those vintage Cal moments where the back's against the wall like it was against Kentucky, and he finds a way. So I'll put it at a 6. There's a slight concern. I expect Missouri to win, but I wouldn't be shocked if Arkansas pulls it off. We got 2 more on the bubble line here, Blake. BYU, they're on the first 4 out per Lenardi. They absolutely blew the doors off Kansas, but now they have to go into Arizona and play a very solid Arizona team. I'm going to go ahead and put this one at a 1. I don't see it.
Ain't happening. I'm telling you, this game ain't going to go in BYU's favor. Winning against Kansas at BYU's arena is one thing. Going on the road to Arizona in front of that crazy environment is a whole different animal. They're not winning this game. I agree with you. I'm putting that at 1.
They also, they played borderline unconscious against Kansas.
Yeah, they played about as good as you could get. Like I said about Arkansas.
And they haven't had a game since then, so they're still riding that high. And they would have beat anybody the way they played against Kansas, to be honest with you. They weren't missing anything. So I'm putting this one at a solid 1. I like what Arizona's been doing recently. The final one over in the Big Ten, Blake, the Indiana Hoosiers against Purdue. They're hosting them over there in Freedom Hall. Now, Indiana is on the next 4 out line per Lenardi. They're playing a little bit better. They've got a coach that's on his way out. It's his last hurrah. do we think that a motivated Indiana team finds a way to beat a Purdue team that's been struggling recently? They've strung together a couple of L's in a row here.
I'm putting this game at like a 2 as well. I know Purdue struggled massively lately. IU shown some signs of hope with that big one against Michigan State. They played close against Michigan. They played, I guess, close to Wisconsin. I mean, they lost by 12, but Wisconsin's like one of the hottest teams in America right now. And then they only lost by 5 at Mackey. Actually, you know what? Ignore what I said about like 1 or 2. I think it's more so in the like 6-7 range. Like IU, like I just said, they're starting to click right now. Mike Woodson, I think him announcing that he's going to leave the program kind of lifted some weight off the shoulders of those players and it's kind of letting them play with like freedom instead of living in the shadows of like who's the next coach next year, what's going on, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I think Purdue wins this one though. To be blunt, pretty blunt.
I think Purdue wins as well. I'll put it at like a 4 on the upset meter. I mean, this Indiana team, they haven't played a game in 9 days, and their last outing was an ugly loss against UCLA. Now, they did have the win against Michigan State, but before that, they were reeled off 3 straight L's against Michigan, Wisconsin, and Purdue. So they've looked better in spots. They've been competing at a better level. I do think what you said about Woodson kind of taking the pressure off the squad has helped. I don't know if they're going to have enough to get it done here, especially with Purdue coming in. They're already licking their wounds, having dropped 3 straight. I think they're going to be playing angry. Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Wren, I think they're going to have a decent game there. And I think that ultimately Purdue's going to end that little losing skid that they've been on. But it wouldn't shock me if Indiana won. I'm just not going to put the panic alarm super high and just leave it a little bit of like a 4 there. I just don't like this Indiana team in general.
No, I mean they got Anthony Leo and Trey Galloway, Indiana citizens, trying to run around and be like their top players. And if I'm going to be honest with you, they're not very good. Trey Galloway does know his role on the team, and he's good at that role. He's just not a good player. You got Umar Ballo, who he's a solid college basketball player, but I just don't think he fits the mold of this team. Mackenzie Mbako, same situation. Gabe Cupps, I don't even know why I'm adding him into this talk because he's been away from the team because of an injury forever. Who else? Luke Good, he's been good. He's no pun intended, by the way. I don't know. The team, Cannon Carlisle sucked. He's been an awful addition from the portal. That was a huge miss by Mike Woodson. Malik Renew, he's a good player, but I mean, yet another one where I just don't think he really like brings that team to a different level. I feel like they're like the top guys on that team aren't surrounded by the right pieces.
Yeah, so, that's a pretty good evaluation. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Before we wrap up the podcast quickly, this is probably going to be getting out there as the game's going on, but Michigan State versus Michigan, just for the sake of seeing if we're right or not before the game starts, who wins? The viewers will probably know who wins.
Sparty party. Yep.
Yeah, the Road Dog Sparty Party. That's a good pick.
I'll go with Michigan. That loss against Purdue, I think they get their head out of their ass.
I think Michigan holds the home court down. This is a big-time matchup, though. First place in the Big Ten on the line. That's going to be a fun one to watch. And I will note before we get out of here.
This one, Luke.
Yeah, before we get out of here, I will note that in the pre-pod lobby, you said Villanova was beating Marquette tonight.
I did.
They currently lead 14-4 5 minutes in. So
What'd I tell you? I tell you?
We'll see what happens there. Villanova's got the home court.
Villanova Magic at Wells Fargo is a real thing.
The ghost of Jay Wright's making an appearance.
Finneran Pavilion, whatever one they're playing at tonight. I don't even know.
The Wells Fargo Center.
They are at Wells Fargo. Yeah. I'm telling you, though, they got magic going on there, some voodoo stuff. Because, I mean, they beat Xavier at home. St. John's they beat at home. Who else have they beat? I thought they beat someone, UConn, when UConn was ranked number 9 in the nation. I'm telling you, that they got some voodoo stuff going on.
And Villanova needs this one. While we were on the topic
Yeah.
of bubble teams, we just didn't talk about it because it's live right now. But yeah, they need this one, and it's an opportunity there. But Blake, let's get out of here. We got about 50 minutes until tip off over in Ann Arbor for Michigan State. We'll have our eyes on that one. We'll be back after the weekend concludes to cover everything. Got some more solo vids coming at you later in the week. But for now, the Full Court Trap Podcast signing out. Luke Tackett and Blake Smith. See y'all later.